Overcoming an irreparable loss is one of the greatest challenges life can present. Sometimes, it's even difficult to put into words the feeling that overtakes us when something essential is taken from us. Whether it's a person, a dream, or a part of ourselves that is lost along the way. The word irreparable carries with it an enormous weight, a sense that, after a certain loss, we will never be the same again. It feels as though life, as we knew it, has been irreversibly destroyed, and from that moment on, we face a future without hope or direction. But is the pain of loss really irreparable? Or is it that, with time and patience, we learn to move forward in ways we might never have thought possible? When we talk about irreparable losses, we often think of situations like the death of a loved one, the end of an important relationship, or the loss of a dream that once seemed defined and secure. These losses can have a profound impact, shaking the very foundations of our being. However, it's important to reflect that, while the pain may seem insurmountable at first, it does not define our entire future. The pain of loss is overwhelming, yes, but it doesn't have to be the end of our story. In fact, many times it is the starting point for a new way of seeing life and ourselves. Overcoming an irreparable loss is a process, a journey full of highs and lows, where with each step we can learn to rebuild and adapt to a world that suddenly seems different. In the beginning of this process, the pain is so intense that we often find ourselves at a loss for words, unsure how to express it. In many cases, the first instinct is to try to ignore or hide this pain, as though it might disappear over time without the need to confront it. But the truth is that pain needs to be felt, lived, so that little by little, we can learn to deal with it. When we deny the pain, we're simply delaying the inevitable. The pain of an irreparable loss requires space. And this space, which initially feels like an endless abyss, begins, over time, to be filled with new experiences, new lessons, and eventually, new meanings. The first stage of this process is undoubtedly the hardest. When a loss occurs, the first feeling is often one of paralysis. The world continues to turn around us, but we feel as if we're out of sync with it. This is completely normal. The loss of something or someone that was significant in our lives alters the way we perceive the world. Colors seem more dull, mornings feel quieter, and the sense of belonging to the world around us disappears, at least momentarily. It's not uncommon that, at first, we try to deny the reality of the loss, as if somehow we could turn back time. Perhaps it's the desire to avoid the pain that makes us act this way, or the belief that life can be repaired, as if we had more control over it than we actually do. This denial, though uncomfortable, is a natural defense mechanism. It doesn't mean we're weak or that we can't handle the pain. On the contrary, it means that our body and mind are trying to protect us from an impact that would be unbearable all at once. Gradually, however, reality begins to assert itself. The pain takes shape, and with it, we start to approach the grieving process. Grief, in its various forms and expressions, is a response to what has been lost, and there is no set time for it, nor a single way to experience it. Grief can be prolonged, it can be confusing, but above all, it is a process that must be respected, even when it takes us to places we don't want to go. Throughout this process, intense emotions arise, such as anger, guilt, and, in some cases, even a sense of injustice. Questions like, "Why did this happen to me?" or "What could I have done differently?" are common and, though they don't have easy answers, they are part of the path to dealing with the pain. Anger may be directed at other people, at the world, or even at ourselves for the feeling that we could have prevented the loss. However, it's important to understand that anger, like guilt, is not something that should be suppressed. These emotions are valid and part of the process of accepting that life, often, is beyond our control. By allowing ourselves to feel these emotions, we begin to realize that, although the loss is irreparable, what we can do is learn to cope with it in the best way possible. One of the hardest, but at the same time liberating, lessons in the process of overcoming an irreparable loss is acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up or forgetting. Acceptance means acknowledging the reality of the loss, understanding that, despite all the suffering, life goes on. Acceptance comes gradually and is not a straight line. There are days when it feels like we'll never be able to accept it, and there are other days when we find a momentary sense of peace. These moments of peace, however small they may be, are the key to recovery. They show us that, even in the face of the deepest pain, there is always the possibility of finding something within ourselves that allows us to keep moving forward. Acceptance, then, becomes a force that doesn't erase the pain but places it in its proper place, allowing us to continue our journey, even with the challenges that lie ahead. Over time, as the pain transforms and we become more able to accept the reality of the loss, we begin to realize something important. Our identity is not defined by what we've lost. Often, when we experience an irreparable loss, we feel that a part of us has been destroyed. Yet, the truth is that we are complex beings, formed by a series of experiences, emotions, and life events that go beyond any one loss. Our identity is far broader than the sum of the things or people we've had. What defines us is not what we've lost, but how we choose to deal with life after the loss. And, in this process of reinvention, we may discover new facets of ourselves that were previously hidden, waiting to emerge. As we continue this journey of overcoming, we begin to realize that loss doesn't prevent us from living, but instead teaches us how to live more deeply, more authentically. Many of us, when faced with an irreparable loss, find ourselves in a relentless search for meaning. We want to understand why this happened, what lesson we can take from it. And while we may not always find clear answers, the simple act of searching for meaning is already part of the healing process. Suffering, in a way, forces us to stop and reflect on what truly matters, on what is essential in our lives. It makes us question our priorities, our values, and it allows us to pay more attention to what truly gives meaning to our existence. The transformation that occurs after an irreparable loss often also involves our relationship with others. The pain of loss makes us more empathetic, more aware of the fragility of life and the struggles others may be facing. As we heal, we begin to look at the suffering of others with greater compassion. As we recover, we feel a stronger need to help others face their own losses. Whether by offering a kind word, a listening ear, or simply being silently present, what we learn in the pain of loss becomes a form of wisdom we can share with those around us. However, overcoming an irreparable loss also involves the challenge of rebuilding our life in a new way. This can seem daunting at first. The life we once knew is gone, and we often don't know where to turn. But it is precisely in this moment of uncertainty that the process of reinvention begins. Reinventing ourselves after an irreparable loss doesn't mean trying to replace what we've lost, but rather finding new ways to give life meaning. We can begin with small steps, such as revisiting old passions, making new connections, or even simply finding ways to honor what we've lost without letting it consume us. The reinvention of life after loss is a gradual process, but it is possible. And with every step we take, we gradually regain the sense that there is life beyond the pain. As the pain starts to soften, it's natural that we may find ourselves thinking that we've overcome the loss. But the truth is that overcoming an irreparable loss doesn't mean forgetting or erasing the pain. Overcoming is, first and foremost, the ability to live with the pain in a lighter, more integrated way. Longing may still be present, but it no longer becomes an unbearable weight. Instead, it becomes a quiet remembrance, a part of our history that shaped us but does not define us. Overcoming an irreparable loss doesn't mean erasing what's gone, but learning to move forward with what remains, with what is still precious in our lives. Finally, overcoming an irreparable loss is a never-ending journey, but one that transforms us over time. Every step taken, no matter how small, is a victory. And perhaps the greatest lesson we can take from this process is that true strength doesn't come from the absence of pain, but from our ability to move forward, to continue living and loving, even after everything. The pain of an irreparable loss challenges us, shapes us, but it also gives us the opportunity to grow, to learn, and, most importantly, to reconnect with what is most essential in our lives.